5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome to a special episode of TTV. This is Debate Corner, recent storyline plot twist edition, where we debate over the recent reveals Greg had so graciously given to Erebus, or Erebus, however you say his name.
A-Bus. On air.
A-Bus. Okay. Well, by now you already know, or most of you already know, the spoilers are given. Of course, if you are one of those people that, are waiting for Greg to finish the serials, I wouldn't recommend holding your breath there. But if you are and you don't want to avoid spoilers, this is obviously going to be a very spoiler-filled episode. I mean, even with not just Bionicle spoilers, but possibly ever media spoilers. So, you want to keep clear of that, then you should probably stop listening now and listen after you've either made the decision to hear this episode and get spoiled, or just wait for Greg. Good luck with that. Good luck.
If I may, I'd like to get a few things over with. First of all, I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I don't think spoilered is a word. Second of all, as far as spoilers go, Shepard dies in ME3. Okay, so we're done here. Okay, so what's the first stop on our bus ride of logic?
Well, here we go. I guess we should probably introduce the two pieces of news that were recently revealed.
And possibly the hosts?
Yes, that too.
Yes.
But obviously the news first. No, alright. I'm Kahi.
I'm Eljay.
And I'm Meso, because I like to be in places where I really don't do much. Hi, everyone.
Well,
This is John.
Well, it's not like we've done this before or anything, but Eljay, you care to give us the rundown of what's been going on lately?
Okay, so we actually have a lot of stuff to do, to talk about. I'll start off with what got revealed first. Back in September, even though it's already September, but for those of you who are listening in October, in September it got revealed that the Great Bean, it was revealed in one of the story serials, the Yesterday Quest, that there was a Great Bean who was disguised as a Matorn Universe inhabitant, and he had been that way since the beginning of the story. Well, it was revealed in September that it was Velika, the crazed, what's it called, rhythm, rhymes, poems.
Rhyme.
What are
Riddle.
they?
Riddles.
Riddles.
Riddle.
Really?
Yeah, riddles. Hey, it was an R word. So anyway, the crazy Pomatoran inventor who spouted riddles and annoyed Kazi to no end.
Hold
update.
up. I have something to say. If he
Alright.
spoke in poems, I guess he'd be a Pomatoran.
Okay, what?
Good. Come on.
That's
Come on.
it.
We don't
Okay,
have time
get
to
out of here.
Really?
Carry on.
Everyone's a critic. And a pranks and a jokester. Whatever.
That's jokes.
So anyway. The next update. Oh wait. Okay, the first one was revealed in August. Second one was in September. So the second one was that we found out that the great being was already named Velika before inhabiting the Matoran body, meaning random Matoran 5129. We'll never know what his original name was, and neither would we want to waste it on a name from the list that Greg has. The second thing we found out from this is that Velika is indeed the killer of Trenchrome and Karzani. He was doing some house cleaning. The third update we got on the 20th of September was that Velika, this is to why, this is to his motive. Velika is eliminating wild cards, beings who are acting out way outside of the expected parameters of the Great Being's plan, which is everyone except for who he actually has involved in his plan. So yeah, now on to our second bit of news. This is called the Red Star Revelations. Greg Farshty said this about the Red Star and how it does not only help Matanui with his liftoff. Matanui was supposed to be a self-sustaining system, and obviously certain individuals played very important roles in maintaining it. In addition, it necessarily had finite resources for producing new beings to replace any lost in accidents, etc. Hence the Red Star. A being who died inside Matanui would be teleported to the Red Star, where their essence would be transplanted into another body, and they would be sent back. Unfortunately, as with so many things related to Matanui's it didn't work very well. The teleporting to worked, but the teleporting from didn't. So, a lot of newly revived dead folk were stuck in the satellite with no way to get back home. And that's where the debate begins. I think that both of these revelations are fine and do not hinder or affect the story in any way, shape, or form. Kahi, on the other hand, believes that they horribly cheapen the story and are, plot twists for plot twists' sake.
Indeed. I guess I'll start going on with Velika, since that's the first news we got. My big problem with Velika is not just of the character or because it was a great being, but because there's so much other great candidates out there for Greg to have picked. Velika honestly really doesn't make as much sense. Of course, the two big contenders for me personally, and I know for a lot of other people, were Kakua and Kapira. Kakua being a Sonics, and Kapira being the Tamatoran seen in the Modern Online game. I guess that was his most famous appearance. Kapira and Kakua both had these sort of odd moments in which they were always sort of insinuated to have these powers that no one else in their universe had. For Kapira, it was obviously his way of sort of teleporting. He could get around quickly while moving very slow. Those were his own words. And because of that, it was his ability that nobody else had in Bionicle at the time. Not even the Toa. Until the Toa Haga and the Mask of Travel. But at the time, it stood out as a very odd example in Bionicle. And it was something... Sorry, I'm getting some dinner here. Be sure to edit this out later. Yes, very professional. Can you close the door, please? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying to conduct my
Agreed.
arguments over the internet.
Yes. Internet debates are always good grief. Alright, you're gonna have to... Sorry, Meso. Hold on.
Hang on, Meso. I gotta make more work for you.
Nobody speaks like that all day. The only people who speak like that are retarded white people.
These ramen noodles are really cold.
Alright. Ironically enough, they are ramen. It's actually really good.
Why did that not surprise me?
Because you like stereotypes.
Oh, hang on, one more stereotype. Hey, Baba, I need chair to sit on, because we sit on floor.
I'm sitting in my bed, thank you very much. Where did I leave off? Teleporting, Alright, teleporting, which was something that the Toa had shown before. Alright, and I guess with Kakua, his most famous act was sending a message to Vakama from the future, and the Nile time track Time trap. Time trap. Vakama is sort of trapped in this sort of vision where Kakua appears to him from a fortress that was being sieged in the future, and he gave Vakama a message from that time telling him to do things. To be honest, I have no idea what that is. I never really read the books because they're too expensive. My library doesn't have them.
Time Trap
Regardless of-
is one of the books I never actually got around to reading. I probably should.
Yeah, I've heard it's the best of the books, but anyhow, because of both of those characters' main defining feature or main defining act being something of extraordinary power, those two were much better candidates for Velika, not Velika, for being the great being than Velika was. Velika's main act, his main trait, he spoke in riddles. And, that's sure it was kind of odd, but Turaga Nuju spoke in bird tweets all the time, and I mean, like, you can't really just point to that and be like, yes, he's a great being because he always spoke in riddles all the time. Plenty of, characters of odd talking quirks have been in Bionicle before, and that had never been there. So, yeah, those are mine. Eljay, any rebuttal to that?
Yes. First of all, I disagree with your point for Velika not being the best candidate, and your points for Krakua and Kapura being better ones. Because I feel they aren't really anything special. Krakua, we have zero knowledge about how he sent that message. And for all we know, it could be a mask of clairvoyance working backwards. It could have been a trick by Makuta. No one really knows at this point. All we do know is that he was involved in that message. Other than that, he has no special traits. He is a generic Toa of Sonics that the Order of Matanui plucked out of some village that Voltraz attacked. And the only special trait Krakua had was he whistled. He was a Matorna Sonics in a village that acted quieter than the aftermath of one of my bad jokes. And here he is going, and not even whistling, just humming. This village sucks. That does not qualify him for being the great being, I do not think. And why would he be in a secluded little pit of quietness in the middle of nowhere? It doesn't make any sense.
Hold on.
As for
how is Voyanui not a secluded point? Secluded.
He wasn't in Voyanui.
No, I'm talking about Velika. How does that make Velika
the
any
Mask
different?
of Life was on Voyanui, so that adds
right,
a little
but no
bit
one
more
did anything.
credence.
But no one did anything there. The Great Being was sent to observe. And all right, I'll bring that point up later. Right.
Anyway,
continue.
As for Kapura, we also have no knowledge about Kapura. We know that he might have had a teleporting effect, but no one's really sure about that.
There are reports that it's not even canon anymore, that it was altered, which I wouldn't know. I'm gonna get tons of hate for this because I don't think I've ever publicly said this. I've never played the MNOG fully. I don't understand.
We attack.
We attack it, Dawn. It's on my list of things to do. That's a mile long at this point, so I really wouldn't know. But yeah, people say it's not even canon.
You will never get to complete this list. I mean, anyway. So Kapura, I don't see him as being any more of a better choice than Velika because he's odd, but he doesn't really. I don't see it as him being a valid choice for the Great Being either. He's a good one, sure, but he's not better than Velika in my eyes. Not to mention the whole mind wipe thing.
I want to bring that up. All right, continue.
That's it.
That's it. Why is Velika a better choice than Krakua or Kapura?
I don't. Did I ever say that he was a better choice?
Yeah, you did. Well, I mean, you sort of implied it. Yeah.
Wait, did I openly say it was a better choice? Did I merely imply it?
All right, here's what you said, or here's what I remember you saying. You said, I disagree with your choice of Velika not being a great candidate for the Great Being, and I also disagree with you saying that Krakua and Kapura are better than him.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you have some reason that Velika should at least be a contender.
Here's the thing. I do not think that Velika is any worse or better than Krakua or Kapura. but I disagree with Krakua and Kapura being better than Velika. Unfortunately, I think they're all on even terms in this event, but I do not believe that Krakua and or Kapura, for the reasons you state, are great being material.
Well, for me, it's not so much being great being material, it's the amount of foreshadowing that goes into it. Bionicle had a ton of mysteries from the moment it was, the moment it was created. And as those mysteries went on, Greg somewhat revealed to us that the great being was dwelling among, the Matoran at large. All right. Again, it is my main problem with it is the amount of foreshadowing that went into this plot twist. Bionicle had a variety of mysteries set up from the beginning, and Greg had recently stated that there was a great being had been living in the Matoran universe this entire time. From that instance, you have a lot of characters to pick from, but there are two that stand out because they did events that were unusual and of extraordinary significance. Like you said with Krakua that it could have been a trick from Makuta, it could have been an illusion, mask working backwards or whatever. But the point still stands though. Yeah, the point still stands though that we could have known if Greg had said that. I guess the point I'm saying is that, like, yes, we don't know what happened with that, but if Greg could have easily said, "Oh, he did that because he's the great being," and it works out. And because of that, not only is that a long-standing mystery solved, it's something that was hinted at a long time ago. If he comes out and says Krakua is a great being, we can look back in that and say, oh, that makes sense because he did this in Time Trap, and we've been wondering how could he have done this entire time? It's because he was the great being. That makes perfect sense. With Kapura too, I don't know if it's non-canon or not, but that was something that really stuck out to me when I first played Monog. When I first became a Bionicle fan, that was something that sort of stood out for me. I was like, how could he do that? And
I see how it is. You play Monog, but you don't bother going to a library to pick out a book and just read it there for like an hour.
My library doesn't carry books, and Monog is free.
Oh, I don't want to hear your excuses. Continue.
All right. Well, with Kapura, it was a mystery that I had myself pondered for a long time, and I know a lot of other people pondered because it was introduced literally at the very beginning of Bionicle.
Obviously, Greg pondered, considering Kapura was his choice.
Yeah,
but that's...
Kapura. I'm getting to that later. Okay, so because of this, Kapura was a natural fit for the position because he showed this irregular trait. If Greg says, "Oh, Kapura is the great being," we can also look back at that and say, "Oh, that makes sense." That's why he was always, not just the quirkiness or anything, but that's how he was able to, move slowly and doing all that sort of thing. He said that he went to Wakama for help. It could even be that, well, I'll get to that later. Greg said that Kapura was his first natural choice, but then he said the mind wipe, which was, all the Matoran being forced into small pods, being transported all the way over to Matanui, or just falling asleep in the Toa Metru transporting him to Matanui. She said that the mind wipe there, which erased all their memories, would have also erased the memories of the great being, and that's why Kapura didn't fit as a choice. I guess my question is, that seems kind of a useless validation to make. Like if Greg had said, "Oh, Kapura mind wasn't erased because he's a freaking great being," that works. I can totally accept that. That makes perfect sense. Like, oh, it works in Matoran. It obviously doesn't work on someone a lot more powerful than Matoran or people that actually made Matoran. So that makes sense. I don't know why Greg had to go out of his way to invalidate something that he already wanted to do. Because obviously that hasn't stopped him from doing whatever he's doing now. It just seems kind of useless in order to do that. That's my real big thing for Kapura. And I was saying before, Kapura asking Vakam for help and how he seems kind of out of it. I mean, if Greg had also explained that, the mind wipe didn't completely erase his memories, just sort of repressed them, and he was like, he was slowly rediscovering his power at that point. But that works again. I mean, I can go with that. That makes perfect sense to me too. So in that sense, both characters can easily be made the great being, and they have a whole decade worth of backstory to back them up on it. They had this whole foreshadowing thing from the moment they were introduced onwards, and the league just really doesn't have that.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that. I can see the whole validation in that sense. And my counterpoint to that is that all we do know about the great beings, one thing we absolutely know is that they're organic, completely organic.
Yes.
Heck, they could be humans for all we know.
Yes, this again.
My thing is, and this kind of delves into the whole spirits of the Matoran or Matanui, for instance. We don't know what exactly was transferred into this Matoran body that Velika inhabits. All we do know is that he inhabits the body. I will 100% agree with you. Absolutely, without a doubt, agree with you. If it's found out that the Great Being had the ability to transfer some of his organs, like his brain, into the Matoran body. In that case, I'll agree with you. But at this moment, we know nothing. At this moment, all we know is that he transferred his spirit into the Matoran body, which is possible somehow in Bionicle because there's Matanui's spirit that went into the Mask of Life. If they made that, that might have come from something. We don't know. So there is
I guess, yeah. I guess my thing of that is that even if we don't know, not only does Greg know, Greg can change that. Like, he can say, oh, it fits, he transported his organic mind into the Matoran body, and he can do that, and it makes sense in the world. I guess my thing is, like, it's not just what we don't know, it's Greg's decisions as a story writer. He didn't need to invalidate his own reasoning because of this. It seems kind of counterproductive in order to do that. There's a very easy fix. You just have to say, because he's a great being. That's literally all you need to give, and it makes sense within that world. Because, we already know the great beings aren't the same as Matoran, so it makes sense that it wouldn't work on them, right? So, I mean, regardless of whether they are organic or they're, he just transferred his, his memories or his, whatever into the Matoran, the fact doesn't remain that Greg could have changed it at any point. And he didn't for some odd reason that we'll probably never know about.
Well, yeah, that is true. Unless we do find out. If we can find out.
Well, I mean, if we do find out. I'd like to see the reasons to why. But if we do find out, I mean, regardless of which, if it is organic, then, it makes no sense. If it isn't organic, then Greg just made a poor decision as a story writer. So either way,
I wouldn't exactly go that far, but there's some validity
that
to
is
what
my
you're
opinion.
saying there.
Yeah. Okay. Also, on that note, I'd sort of like to point out that Greg once said that we would never see a great being, and lo and behold, Velika has been there since 2006. So.
Oh, you're funny, haha.
You got jokes.
You know what he means.
Yeah. I know. Anyhow, that's my take on this whole great being reveal thing. It's, I guess, I can't see if Velika was at least used more, I guess, in this story past 2006. Like, he appeared for 2006, and that was basically it. He didn't really do anything of giant significance or something that made people sort of hint towards being the great being, and nothing he has done so far has hinted towards him being the great being. And at the point in the story that we are at, even if Greg was to continue writing, it's too late for him to start hinting at it because he's actually revealing it now. So
one thing I will give credence to is that the personalities do match as far as great beings, and then what we've seen from the Matoran prior to this. We didn't, because it's an unrepressed tinkering, a sense, wanting to be an engineer, wanting to tinker with machines, wanting to build, do this and that. That is a trait that was not found in Krakura or Kapura. I'm not saying that, makes this whole thing snap like a puzzle piece. I'm just saying that is something that lends a little bit more leeway to Velika being the Great Being.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. We don't know how great beings act, and from what we've seen, they don't really act like talking riddles and stuff. But the tinkering does, give a bit of credence to Velika being a great being. Of course, it also gives credence to Nuparu being the great being, but regardless. Anyhow.
Wasn't there a point brought up by like how Pomatorans aren't normally inventors? And it was always strange how Velika was. I remember that being said somewhere. And like, oh, now it all makes sense because he's like the only Pomatoran ever. But, meh.
Yeah.
I don't know. Pomatoran are builders.
Yeah.
So I kind of think it's more along the lines of Nuparu being the odd one out.
Well, no, Nuparu wasn't the odd one out, but the Pomatoran, 2001 terminology there. Pomatoran were more of sculptors rather than just builders. They sculpted, many statues or, many heads. I mean, the entrance to Pokora was like this giant, massive line of headless Matoran, basically.
Yeah.
Obviously, somebody had to work on that. So,
see, I looked it up.
Different than,
I looked it up. Engineering is not really specific to a Matoran type. It's
I thought it was
pretty much
Matoran.
What now?
Matoran of iron.
No, it's not specific to any certain Matoran. Engineering is a general Matoran occupation. Like there's Delflak. Remember him?
Who the heck?
Yes.
Is it Defalak?
He's the guy that.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Defilak. Sorry, I literally that's how I've been pronouncing his name since he was introduced. Defilak, yeah, Defilak was an inventor, an engineer. Nuparu, who actually I don't know if you guys remember this, he invented the Vaki.
Yeah.
Velika,
Yes.
Voltraz, and an unnamed Limitoran from Marinui.
Unnamed Limitoran.
Okay. I mean, what about the Naira Ghosts, though?
The Naira Ghosts, yes, but to my knowledge, the Naira Ghosts were not specific to being Matoran of Iron.
Matoran. All right. Well, regardless of that really has no bearing on what we're talking about today. So we'll move on to the Red Star, unless you have anything else to say.
Honestly, I don't really have anything that's gonna shake this debate, but
Okay.
I personally, for the reasons I have stated, I have no major beef against Velika being the Great Being. I actually think it is a fine choice. I just wish it would have been handled a little bit better in regards to being revealed. And that's it.
Well, all right, so we're moving on to the Red Star. And with the Red Star basically functioning as the Bionicle afterlife in this case. The dead beings are sort of teleported there, and then they're teleported out. Okay, so I guess I'll start again. Or, unless Eljay, do you want to start, since I started last time?
I think I'll go ahead.
All right, let's hear this.
So, based off some points that you wanted to talk about, as far as cheapening the death of characters, I'm not too sure. I'll start off with this. Because I do not see how it cheapens their deaths as a kind of a doorstop's already been put in place, is that it doesn't really work. I agree that it's kind of a pointless after the fact thing, but I don't think it cheapens them so much as just makes it so that they can, I don't know, it's pretty much a useless thing, but I don't think it's detrimental.
I guess we're gonna go down point by point then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for me, when I say it cheapens the death of characters, I mean it cheapens the notion of death itself. death is, in many pieces of literary fiction, it is the ultimate when it comes to, when it comes to limits, when it comes to sacrifices. When somebody dies or like sacrifices themselves for somebody, death is supposed to be it. Like, the ultimate sacrifice. You're not coming back. You're not doing anything because it parallels, what happens in real life. When someone dies, 99.9% of the time, if you're not, like Jesus or somebody, you don't come back.
Uh-oh. We're gonna get flack, dude. Oh, no. Oh, well. Anyway.
Yeah. But, yeah, who cares?
Yes.
Basically, when that happens, especially in fiction, that makes death no longer the ultimate there is. You no longer have this giant, the biggest, I don't know how you can say it. I used the word for it once, but it's like the biggest thing that could ever happen to a character, the biggest event that could actually happen to it. And that's now reduced to just being, just being put on the bus for a couple of years. Or just not appearing in the story for a couple of years. I guess it's very common in kids media. Whenever you see a kid, like main character die in a kids film, what do you expect? Like at the end of the movie, they're somehow going to be revived. I mean, this even happened in Bionicle, Mask of Light, right? Jollar dies after being killed by the Rocky, and you're like, they can do that at the end of the movie. Of course, he's going to be brought back. I mean, this happens in all these kids' movies. Generally speaking, when someone dies, if they're not like, at the very beginning of the movie, that sets it off, like, oh, this orphan, this kid's parents died and he's now an orphan, something like that. If it's near the end of the movie, you've gotten to like him, you've gotten to all this thing, and they die, generally, like, through, like, magic or, like, I don't know, some weird power of whatever, Wally, I don't know how he came back just by, like, forehead touch thing, whatever. Basically, characters are known to be revived in kids' film, and when you sort of introduce death and stick to it, it makes it not really adult, but it makes it kind of a bit more mature. Like, this thing is willing to deal with the topic of death. They're not going to try to cheat their way out of it by having the character be revived at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And this is made even worse because, a lot of people who died have been dead for years, and they've been thought dead for years. And just by bringing him back, you sort of just, you cheapen the entire sort of dichotomy of it. I mean, it's not just like in Tuyet's revival. Tuyet's revival was like, that was
Don't even go there with Tuyet's revival. I'll put it this way. I can be described as a Bionicle purist. Anything that's in the Bionicle story, I do not have any quarrel with. I don't really mind. Greg's decisions, I can kind of think out and appreciate. I don't like being called a Bionicle purist, and I dare any of you call me that. I'll hunt you to the ends of the
You're
earth.
a Bionicle purist, and you know it.
Anyway, but Tuyet's revival, that's probably the one thing that kind of bugs me about Bionicle. That's the one resuscitation that bugs me.
But Eljay, it's Tuyet's rival. It's Tuyet. Didn't everybody want to see Tuyet come back? I mean, come on.
No one wanted to see Tuyet come back.
I'm sure she had some fans. In some deep, dark corner of the fandom. No, I'm kidding.
No, I thought she was... I honestly wish she could have sticked around and not died, because she was a very interesting character. She was like the perfect anti-hero that Bionicle needed. She wasn't completely, she wasn't evil. She was just doing what she thought was, what she thought was right and what she thought would protect everybody. And she, like certain governments I can mention today, had to cross the line between protecting people and giving them personal freedom.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm actually fairly glad you brought up Jala's death. And actually, by that means Takua's death. Because they did both die.
Yes.
I'm actually extremely glad you brought that up. Because that is the Red Star is an excellent explanation for why they were brought back.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, and I can debate this. I don't know if it
Okay.
counts, but sure it was not in Matanui, but it was definitely on Matanui, and it was on a byproduct of Matanui.
As everyone's been saying, it's like that's the red star. We finally have an answer for why that even happened.
Yeah, and then
Well-
I just realized it did actually happen. It's somewhat sort of in Matanui. It kind of happened in a hallway that brings you into Metanui.
Yeah.
So technically, it did. That is an explanation as to why Jal and Takua were brought back. This also happens to explain like some other characters, but I think no, it explains no one else. But Jal and Takua, it's a great example. But
Well-
anyway,
Okay.
I see less of a problem with this, actually, in contrast to Velika, because sure, death, it may kind of cut down on it, but this definitely does have a lot better foreshadowing. And Bonsai, the BZ Power Loco debater, aside from Kahi here, did point out the dark red light stones in the room on the 777 staircase down to the Mask of Light, where Matora was sacrificed and then brought back. They were dark red light stones.
Yeah, it's like
red
so
light
some
stones.
people were like, oh well, you know, it's probably just a color coincidence.
That's
But
yeah.
The
That's-
fact
you probably shot Red Zam.
the fact that that was the year which the Red Star was actually brought into the mainstream story, like the first year since 2001, where it's actually been brought in with the whole Nika thing. And then we suddenly have a magic room which can resuscitate people that has oddly colored light stones.
And then
like,
finally,
I don't know.
yeah,
Right.
that also gives credence to why they were turned into Toa Nika. The Red Star changed them into Toa Nika. Who's to say that Lekan, or someone who you could see all this, didn't do that from the Red Star?
That'd be interesting.
Well, I was under the assumption that the teleporting to work and teleporting like back didn't. I would assume that also meant that they couldn't exchange bodies or like repair bodies and send them to Vitola and Ica.
They didn't
But
repair them or exchange them. They upgraded them.
okay, well, they upgraded them. How does that make a difference? How does that? Basically, you can't do that without teleporting
I'll
something,
put it
right?
to you this way, Kahi.
Yes.
Let's say when you were 6 years old, you were annoying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's besides the point. You were a Matoran.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you were given like super gross steroids and you grew 10 feet. That's not exchanging your body or repairing it. That's upgrading it, and possibly against the law.
Okay. All right. I guess I can see that. I mean, I'm not sure what it has to do with the Red Star.
Here's the,
teleporting
it doesn't
everybody
really
back.
have to do anything. It's just a side point. It explains something.
Well,
Anyway.
I mean, back to my original point, but I was going to say, it's not just cheapening the death of the characters, but it's cheapening the death of everybody because even though we haven't been shown who's actually there and who isn't, there remains the possibility that anybody can come back, and that possibility in and of itself is what cheapens the notion of death, because who knows, whoever dies in the story, all you have to do is say like, oh, they're just teleported to the Red Star, and boom, they're there. You can bring them back. They can bring him back if you want to. So it's just like, from now on, any character that dies, you can't really say, oh, they're actually gone for good, because they might have been teleported to the Red Star, or even if they weren't teleported to the Red Star, they could have been put into another place that could have resurrected them. Just as far as the story concept goes, the concept of resurrection, Greg can implement that everywhere. He doesn't just need the Red Star to do that. And if he's willing to use the Red Star to bring other people back, who says he isn't willing to use that to just do it to anybody else?
Well, I can see that, but considering we haven't heard from Lacan since 2005, we haven't heard from Matoro since 2007, aside from a slight story serial, and we really haven't heard from any other dead character since, except for Tuyet, who didn't really die. And who was the other one? Oh, and Mavra, who, that explains why he's in the Red Star. I'm not gonna go ahead and jump to the conclusion Greg is going to start bringing back characters left and right for Deus Machinas or Mangoes or whatever.
I'm just saying that the concept. I'm not saying that Greg has brought it back or he will bring it back, but he's introduced his concept. He's introduced his Deus Ex Machina of being able to bring anybody back. It's not so much that he will, but like from now on, whenever you think of Death and Bionicle, it doesn't really mean as much because they can get brought back. It will, but they can't. There's that possibility of them always being brought back.
Up to Greg's whim.
There's a possibility.
Yeah.
Up to Greg's whim. Whatever he feels like doing can be done via this device, which I guess is like a writer's device in action.
Yeah. I suppose.
This is like author powers in comics.
The author powers.
So,
that's more of a comedic thing.
Wow.
Yeah, they are. Well, yeah. Anyhow, I guess that's what it means when it cheapens Death of characters. Death isn't the ultimate medium anymore. It doesn't have the same, oomph that it used to. I guess. I guess you sort of wish that someone would stay dead. Especially, I read a lot of comics. Whenever a comic character dies, 99.9% you expect him to come back at some point. It's like it's an old saying that there are four people, there are four kinds of people that are permanently dead in comics: Uncle Ben, Gwen Stacy, and Batman's parent.
Wow.
Yes. It used to include Jason Todd, but Jason Todd came back. So I'm not even including him here. Technically, Uncle Ben also came back, but I'm excluding that too because that was like for a quick second there. Basically, it's like of course Batman's parents never came back because they have to die for him because Batman. Basically, what I'm saying is that because you expect everyone to die, whenever someone dies in comics, Johnny Storm recently died in Fantastic Four, and he became the Future Foundation. I don't know anybody who expected that to last. But everybody's just like, oh, it's a comic book. They're going to come back again. Superman's death was like the trope codifier for this. Superman died. He had this giant battle, and he died. And literally, about just a couple of issues later, he returns. After they had this giant funeral and DC hold this giant event and it's on newspapers everywhere and they have this special edition Death of Superman book, and it's like a black cover and it has everything. Just a couple issues later, he comes back. Turns out he's in super sleep. When Kryptonian's near death, they go into a Kryptonian super sleep, basically. Well, of course, they couldn't call it the sleep and wake up of the sleep return to Superman, but it still bears the same thing. It was just a cheap cop-out. Now, from now on, whenever anybody dies, you're like, it's a comic book. They're going to come back. And same thing with Bionicle. Now that revival for anybody has been introduced as a concept in Bionicle, now Death is just like, oh, it's a Bionicle character, so you can come back. Death doesn't mean anything, basically, in Bionicle anymore. It doesn't. And this proves that.
I'm not so sure. I actually really disagree with that because, like I said, Greg hasn't brought any characters back. We've seen Mavra once, but that doesn't mean we're going to see Matoro strolling down talking to Lacan about how much of an idiot Vakama is.
Well, obviously he means to bring more people back. Else he wouldn't have gone through this entire thing and making the Red Star, basically like a heaven-esque afterlife thing. There's no point in doing that and setting this whole thing up and only bringing back one character. Greg is obviously setting up for something more.
I am not 100% convinced on that. I personally think that this is just an answer to a mystery. This is going to answer a few questions.
Doesn't we solve any mystery?
Yes, it does.
At all. No, okay, here's the thing. Jawler John Takua's revival, it was always implied to come from the power of Takuda Nuva. In the
No.
it was never the Red Star was never pointed at to in the Mask of Light, the entire movie. At the end, it's implied that the power of friendship, or it's because it's the super power of light, Toa of Light and Makuta of Shadow, and they form together and they have such awesome power. I mean, for the longest time, people thought that Takuta Nuva was Madanui. And it was just just that sort of, yeah.
I'm not talking about Jalan Takua.
Okay.
I'm specifically talking about the Red Star. It's always been a mysterious thing, and sure, it helps Matt Nui lift off, but helping Matt Nui lift off is not necessary for the Toa Nika to become real. I think I don't think off of that it answers some more questions, but I don't think Greg has any plans to bring characters back from the dead.
I don't get where you're coming from with that, with the Toa Nika thing. I don't see how being able to revive people and take them from dying, basically, how that connects to lightning giving the Matoran superpowers, super lightning powers, alongside Toa powers.
It could have been a dead person like Lacan, or couldn't have been Matoro. It could have been a dead person in the Red Star helping them out. That's the thing. That's where that comes from. And you watch, if that happens. If that happens,
yes,
you owe me $5.
No, if that happens, this is an example of poor writing. Not poor writing. You're right. No, it's not poor writing.
To the Red Star and he's like, the Toa-Nika are in trouble. They don't know. They're not ready. They're Matoran. I'm gonna send some lightning bolts their way and cook them to a bunch of Matoran fried chicken.
Whoa, what if it was like the intent to kill them, but it didn't?
Yeah. I'm going to help.
Okay, all right, yeah. That was the wrong thing for me to say. It's not necessarily bad writing, sorry, but it's more of not really foreshadowing. I guess it's a very far stretch of a connection to make.
Yes, but it is one at all.
Yes, but
if there's a connection to be made, gosh darn it, I'm gonna make it.
But it's such it's like a far connection. It's something that Greg could have introduced another mystery to solve that. Maybe the beings in the Red Star are the ancestors of the Agori, or I don't know. There's other things he could have used to also solve that mystery. It's not so much about having the death. The thing completely explains it completely explains why this would happen. That is still kind of a far out theory. I'm not going to say it's not possible, and it might end up being true. And I wouldn't mind if it was true. That's not too bad. But I don't know. It's just it's not just specific people, but anybody can come back. That's what really annoys me about that.
I can see that being annoying, and I can agree that is annoying to an extent. But I do not think that this cheapens death by any means, and I definitely do not think that this lessens Greg's ability to write at all.
Okay. Here's my thing. How does this not cheapen death? How does it not cheapen death? Exactly.
How many characters have come back from the dead throughout Bionicle?
Multiple ones.
Off the top of your head that you can name.
Jalar, Takua, Tuyet,
Mavra.
Okay, Tuyet doesn't count.
Tuyet does count.
No.
Oh,
Tuyet was not killed. She was taken by the order of Matt Nui to a secret universe where she was, tortured or something? No, she was calmly asked where the pieces of the Nui stone were, where she then convinced her guard to help her escape, faking her death, and then she managed to find her way back into the normal Matoran universe. She's not dead.
How convoluted.
No. It is very convoluted.
Okay.
Especially since they had a whole chapter in 2007 of a book in 2007 dedicated to Matoro visiting her dead body and reviving her dead body and having her talk and stuff like that. And
she didn't talk.
It was just she didn't talk. Okay. I didn't read the book. I just remember.
Okay, that was okay. No, you have no excuse. That was a free online serial. You have no excuse.
Okay. Yeah, but
So anyway.
I have no excuse.
Yeah, you better believe it. Okay, so anyway, Takua and Jala. Who else?
Okay. Mavra, Zach-Tan.
Not confirmed, but I'll give you with that. Wait. Well, I would not go as far as to say Zach-Tan.
Okay, maybe it's not confirmed. But hey, come on, Green Mist. How can you? Okay.
Not that. It's not that. I'm not saying I wouldn't go as far as to put it on this list because it's not him. I'm saying he might not have died.
Yeah.
True. I mean, well, someone is supposed to die, right?
What now?
Someone was supposed to die. That's what the Massive Clairvoyants predicted. Someone's gonna die.
Well, here's the thing. I have some mixed feelings about that because sure it said, "Oh no, someone is gonna die," but here's the thing. It may have looked like it to the mask. We don't know exactly what Gaaki saw in that mask, or if she heard a voice saying,
that was like a fake cliffhanger. That's like a I guess like that cliffhanger is now effectively ruined since nobody died. But all right.
Well, I don't know. We'll talk about that later. So anyway, I'm not gonna count Zach-Tan just yet. So 3 characters so far. Keep going.
3 characters so far. Hydraxon.
Oh yeah.
Wait, who?
Hydraxon.
Also not gonna count that.
Fine, be that way.
I will be that way because Hydraxon didn't necessarily. Well, let me look him up.
He was a guardian. He was a guardian who died, and then the Mask of Life turned Dekar back into Hydraxon. So technically, he didn't really come back to life as much as he was like.
Okay, no, did not come back to life.
Okay. We'll just take those 3. Okay, we'll pick those 3. Go on. Oh, but yeah. Okay.
So we're not gonna count Hydraxon, correct?
Okay. All right.
Okay, go on. You still have 3.
I don't know, that's off the top of my head. That's all I can think. I'm sure. I know the Makuta Pterodax was thought to be dead for several times, and he wasn't
thought to be dead.
Yeah,
thinking
it's not the same.
Thinking's an obscure subject at TTV. No, anyway.
Let's go with those 3.
So, just 3?
Yeah.
Okay. If that's it, over 12 years, I'm going to say 12 years because they're, approximately 10 to 12 years apart.
Okay.
That, in my eyes, does not validate the concept of death in Bionicle being cheapened by this revelation. If only 3 dead characters were revived.
I think you're sort of missing my point here. Okay, here's the thing about resurrection. I don't have a big problem with resurrection. Sometimes, it's been done poorly sometimes, but every time it's been done pretty well. And if it's done in relatively small cases, then it works, just specifically for that instance. Jalor's revival, he was, implied to be dead, but when he was revived, it was only because of, I think, something about, unity, duty, destiny, the power of friendship, etc., and because Takuta Nuva was there. Takuta was supposed to be like this once-in-a-lifetime amalgam thing of, the most power, 2 of the, at the time, the most powerful people we could imagine in the Bionicle universe merging together. So because of that, it's a very isolated example. It's not, it's not something that can apply to everybody. The reason I say this cheapens stuff in Bionicle now is because it now extends to anybody. This, unlike Takuta Nuva, you don't have to be in a certain place at a certain time to know a certain person, to be a friend of a certain person. You can literally be anywhere on Madanui, and you have that possibility of being revived.
And now you bring up another point.
So I guess, what?
You've brought an interesting point up.
What?
If they're in Matanui or on Matanui, yes. The Matanui robot's been destroyed. They're on Spherus Magna. In a sense,
well, obviously the teleporting 2 still works, obviously, because that's how Haka.
Are you sure? Are you sure? because Greg only said if it's, and I quote, someone, a being who died inside Matanui would be teleported to the Red Star. Everyone's on Swift Magna now. They've been dumped out like a bowl of marbles.
Right.
So I'm not so sure that the same applies, because the inside of Matanui might have had something that made it so, hey, Red Star, someone died. Come on, pick it up. But Swift Magna doesn't have anything like that.
I guess.
What now?
For modern, my theory for how the Red Star works is that coming from like computer science major E, which is like very novice. I've only been in it for like a year, so I'm not an expert on anything. Here's my theory of how it would work. The Matoran OS makes a dump of its memory system before, every so often. Right before the thing dies, it sort of it sends that memory out towards the Red Star. Once the Red Star receives it, it then just downloads it into a new body. Now, I'm assuming that's what it means by essence, because it has been confirmed already that the Matoran folk, the Matoran run on computer programs. That's why their personalities are noted as a glitch. It's because they're programmed to do something, and there's a glitch in the programming. So they obviously run a program on on code, on electronic devices. So because of that, it's sort of like I guess the Red Star could be sort of like like a cloud receiver. The memory dump of the Matoran OS is put into like a cloud storage thing, and the Red Star receives it once the body no longer sends out any more information, and then it transfers it to a new body and then teleports that down. That's from my perspective, that would be the most efficient way to do that. Now at this point, I don't think it has anything to do with Matanui as much as it has to do as who's actually there. For instance, if one of the Gory dies, they're obviously not going to be able to do that same thing, going up to the Red Star, because the Red Star is built for him. But I would still assume as long as the Red Star is still active, it doesn't really matter where they are, as long as the Red Star can still receive the signal, the cloud signal. I mean, okay.
I can see that.
Yeah,
but
that's
another point is if they can, what you said right there, if they can still receive the cloud signal.
Yeah.
That is another point that needs to be worked into, because Matanui's systems might have been like a direct link, like for example a radio tower. I might have bounced the dead Matoran to the Red Star to get the info back. But now that has been disrupted, aka the radio tower being knocked over, that might not work the same way.
Well, I guess my feeling is less about like actual schematics and more about the concept. At the end of the day, kidding. At the end of the day, Greg has decided to put resurrection inside Bionicle. The concept, I mean, not just resurrection of a certain character. He's enabled an easy way to make resurrection available for all characters, meaning that he is not above using some giant machine or some giant mystery to bring people originally thought dead back to life. So obviously, regardless of what how it actually works, or even if the Red Star actually works in the Barra Magna or not, what we do know is that Greg sees it fit Greg doesn't view or value death as much as it was originally thought he would. Greg doesn't view death as far as like the big impact, because why do you kill people? Why do you kill characters at all?
Why did Greg kill people?
No. Why would any author kill off any character, any main character, a hero, a protagonist? Why would he do that?
For the multiple reasons. It could be motive for another uprising hero like Vakama. It could be to add a sense of drama and danger to the story.
Okay.
But here's the thing. I know where you're going with this.
I know.
Like I just said.
Finished. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. There are really three reasons that often kill the character. One, he's really tired of that character, and maybe even a lot of his readership is tired of that character. So he does this either as a favor to him or as a favor to them. Two, he does it for dramatic, the added drama or the added significance of it. Or three, he does it for shock value in order to punctuate that moment. Generally, for the deaths in Bionicle, several have been for shock value, but most of the protagonist deaths, I mean specifically Matora's, but a lot of the protagonist deaths in general have been sort of drawn out. You know, the difference between like a shock death and a drawn out death is a shock death just, comes out of nowhere and you're like, whoa, and that's what makes the moment for you. The drawn out death is like, you get stabbed and he's just taking this last breath, or he decides to sacrifice himself, and that's like a more drawn out death. That's to add drama to the scene. Using death as a drama device, like, adds something to that story. Because it is death, that's why more drama is added. Just instead of like, if I do this, I'm gonna fall asleep for about 2 years. That doesn't add as much drama. The reason you introduce death as an aspect of it is to make that drama, more meaningful. Once you remove the absolutality, is that how you say it? Once you remove, the whole thing is death is absolute, you remove that sense of drama. That sense of drama is no longer there, because it doesn't mean, this character is going to, you're never going to see him again. He's giving up everything. He's never going to see anyone he knows. I mean, from now on, this character will be dead. And that's what drives that drama thing home. Now, it's not even just for one character. It's for everybody. When anybody dies, there's always, this stigma of, the death actually meaning something. It's not going to be there.
I'm going to go off on a tangent here and say, there used to be a show that I watched, okay? And in this show, near the end of the series run, because it was canceled, they introduced, one of the older villains of this series set up basically a facility. And in this facility, it was discovered that several fan-favorite characters from years past were being held there and being tortured, and were having mind control experiments being run on them for personal reasons. It was people that this villain knew or was related to, or for scientific reasons to study. And then over time, it was found more and more people were being actually held in this facility. And by the end of the series run, it was basically a question of, because the series actually ended with a cliffhanger that, guess what? Someone else presumed dead was alive after all. Because of a lot of drama, the whole reason the series ended with a cliffhanger, there were reasons for it. But basically the point I'm getting at is, once this facility was introduced, every time a character died in the series, my mindset was always, they can always bring them back at any time anyway.
Yeah, that is what I'm sort of getting at here. It's not even anything with the Red Star. It's just Greg can always bring him back if he wants to. There's always a possibility they'll be able to come back. It's much more open in that way. Even with, I'm going to bring something that I know neither of you really know about, but I'm pretty sure a large number of readers know about. With Homestuck, they've introduced this whole thing of, the dream bubbles, and all these people previously thought dead, just all, the trolls that are killed by Gamzee, and, just in general, these people were coming back, and they could just be all brought back through these dream bubbles and stuff. It's not, I guess it's not so bad when someone gets killed now, because for me, as long as there's a dream bubble, Hasi can bring him back. Of course, he obviously killed everybody in that update, that one recent update where everybody's in dream bubble, and then anyhow, basically, yes, he could do that, but they can always come back because there's other dream bubbles, and it's just from now on, whenever someone dies in Homestuck, you don't really expect them to die for long. Of course, being resurrected was a key factor in Homestuck with the Klesvets and stuff, and that's a whole nother matter to go through. Well, it's basically once you once you introduce this whole thing, it's not like, oh, it's a specific, super special event just for this character that he came back. And it happened, like, just a few moments after he died. Once you've established several years or like a long period of time after this person's death, they can be brought back to life. Now, when anyone dies, and be like, Greg can always bring him back. There's a good possibility he'll be back later on. That drama is no longer there.
Yeah, that's a possibility. But I am still not too sure. This again harks back to that point I made about them being on Source Magnum and his body being destroyed.
Yeah.
That may be a valid point. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
Another thing,
Not sure.
We don't know what's going to happen to the Red Star.
I guess that is sort of the thing. We don't know what's going to happen, but what we can deduce from that is that Greg's willing to bring the possibility of it happening into the story.
I
which
can agree
in
that
and of itself frightens me.
I can agree that there's the possibility, but unlike you, I still have faith that Greg can still carry the story out as has been.
I guess for me, death is like a very deciding point in several things of fiction. If you do decide to bring everybody back, especially if you had someone die a dramatic death and then open the possibility of everybody. I mean, Leecon. Okay, let's go with Leecon. Leecon died a dramatic death, and he has, even with like all the theories excluding somebody from being teleported to Red Star, Leecon is probably one of the most likely to get into the Red Star.
Yeah.
No. Here's the thing. Anyone who dies does go to the Red Star.
I know, but like people are saying, maybe if you're not on Mata Nui, or maybe if you're vaporized or something, you don't go. I mean, out of all the possible theories there, I have heard one against Leecon saying that because of his mask being used for someone else, that it wasn't. I don't know if that works exactly.
And then there was also the part where people were saying, if it's people that have completed their destiny, they will be back.
Yeah, that is true.
For instance, Makuta, because that's a gray area. Like, obviously, Greg said Makuta's never coming back in the story, but is Makuta excluded from this? If he was in control of the Mata Nui robot at the time, is he valid to be sent up there? Or, like, what about, Matoro, the obvious one everybody's clamoring about?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say this about Greg confirmation. He once said explicitly in the PM, all the Makuta are dead after 2008. And then in the late 2009, early 2010, he revealed, Miserex isn't dead. Which, I mean, I'm okay with that. I thought Miserex shouldn't have, I don't think all the I'm pretty sure Miserex was the most interesting out of all the Makuta personally for me. And, oh yeah, I knew Meso was going to come up with that. But, I mean, regardless though, it's like Greg has been known to confirm stuff like 100%, and especially when it comes to death, and then revert that whenever he thinks it's convenient for the story later on. So this one, he could have said, Matoro's never coming back. He said that in 2007, and he's obviously said after, Makuta died, like, Pterodax is never coming back. Who knows? He might find it fit to story to bring him back. I mean, he's done it before. I wouldn't pass him to do it again. But
I don't know.
yes.
I am willing to be content with this and wait and see where Greg goes with this, honestly. Because at this point, we really just don't know.
I guess this does have to go. Ever since, I have to say, really since 2009, I've grown more pessimistic towards Greg's ability as a good planner, not as a writer. His writing style's it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. It keeps you entertained, especially if you're the target audience. If you're like 9 to 12-year-old kid, it does. The writing style keeps you entertained.
You would not know. You would not know.
No, I wouldn't. I got into BIONICLE when I was like 14, so I wouldn't like.
No.
I mean,
I'm not talking about
thing
how
I enjoyed.
I'm not talking about how you grew out of BIONICLE. I'm talking about you've never read the books.
I read the story serials. They're basically the book free. Okay, so so I guess like in 2009, of course, I've said this before. Greg introduced these new characters that they did not appeal to me in the slightest, and they weren't interesting, and I sort of like I didn't detach from the story. because I was very invested in the Reign of Shadows and like what was going on in Madanui. I was really invested in what was going on there, but I didn't really pay attention much to what happened on Bara Magna. I didn't pay attention to like the history, the core war. I mean, like really anything on Bara Magna that asked me on it, I'll be very spotty about it. I don't really know much about it because it didn't interest me. So after that, of course, then 2010. Now, of course, the ending, which we've argued about before, and obviously Var didn't set his recording right or something, so you're probably never going to hear what we think of that unless we decide to re-record it in the future. Basically, though, that ending was what really drove out home to me. It was like, I don't think Greg really thought this entire thing through. This could have been handled a lot better. There's there's ways it could be handled a lot better. The whole pushing into an asteroid and then that sort of like that really brought the bar down for me. And ever since then, it's sort of been hit and miss when it comes to not his writing but his plot planning. And these two recent examples are have sort of confirmed that for me. It's not so much that that it's a worse, the Greg's a terrible writer, but the plot planning and the things he would have wanted to go through and the things he would have introduced wouldn't have worked, or they wouldn't have worked as well as I'd like them to work. And as a fan, even though that's it's kind of self-centered because it's only my opinion, but as a fan, that's what I would have wanted. So that's where I'm coming from with all this. And the end summary you can get all of this is that I don't think Greg is that very good plot planner. And I don't think he really thought everything through, and I don't think he foreshadows things as much as he should have. And both of these recent revelations, neither of them have been foreshadowed. Because Greg has, it's not like they have different writers every year. Greg's been writing the story since 2003-ish, right? Or he's been involved in it. And he's around then he started actually writing and he became the sole writer from then on, basically, for anything except for I think the movies he had some help, the script or something. But basically, he's been the sole writer. He's been the big canon guy, when it comes to what's officially Bionicle canon and what isn't. And because of that, it's just he could have foreshadowed a lot of stuff easily in the past, and he didn't choose to. Or either he didn't choose to, or he didn't do it well enough, or he didn't think of the ideas beforehand. It goes back to plot twist or plot twist sake. He's doing this just to give people the sort of sense of a surprise, sense of a plot twist. But it's just sort of there. There's just no plot twist. Is really you have these sort of hints and sort of clues early on. Or and they all sort of lead up to it, but you don't really notice them. But or some you do notice, and you just wonder why, and it's just been so long you've forgotten. Others are kind of fresh, but they all are leading sort of like this rabbit trail. And then once you reach the plot twist, you're like, of course, really good plot twist. They come on you, and you're like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. And then you look back and like, well, but that makes sense because of this and this and this and this and this, and this all leading up to this. That makes sense. Now with this plot twist, all the stuff that went before makes perfect sense. That's what really solidifies a good plot twist. Greg has not been doing that, especially with Velika and the Red Star. The Red Star has seen some attention, but never been even hinted at as where Bionicles go after they die. And Velika was never really hinted at as the great being either. He was just another quirky character in 2006, and he was never pushed on as anything beyond that. So that's my big thing. It's the foreshadowing aspect to the plot twist. Why I think that these plot twists are poorly handled, and I also think that Greg's plot planning is poorly handled.
I can agree with Velika a little bit more than the Red Star, but I'm not entirely sure about Greg's plot planning. I think at this point where he has full control of the story, he might not remember everything, but I do not exactly agree with that fully. So I think that we may just need to wait and see. Wait, what now?
No, I wanted to clarify something beforehand.
Shoot.
I do not. I do not hate Greg as far as a person. He's shown a tremendous amount of dedication to his fan base, and he's answered a ton of my questions time and time again, and I'm eternally thankful for him for that. and he's done stuff that no one really needed to do. He didn't really need to go on the farm and answer our PMs every day or so, but he did. So for that, I commend him, and he really stayed connected with his fan base. He's a really great people person, like a really great publicist thing.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't hate Greg in the slightest, but I do have some problems with his writing. This is what's coming up.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I think we need to wait and see a little bit more, but I personally do not have very many qualms with how this has been playing out.
I have a request. I've barely said anything this whole time. Can I give my closing thoughts?
Sure.
You
Okay,
can,
because
Meso.
I have a bit of an interesting perspective here. Because I get told a lot of the time, wow, Meso, you sure do have some interesting opinions on Bionicle stuff. And I do, and I have, and I do.
Yeah.
Because, just to name a couple, I liked TLR more than any of the other 3 Bionicle movies. I thought Web of Shadows was poorly done, LOMN was overrated, and Mask of Light was the corniest thing I've ever seen.
And this is why no one wants to hear these. No, anyway, go on.
Actually, I agree with you.
I liked 2009 more than any other year of Bionicle overall.
I don't agree with you. You're dead to me.
And I think it was ruined by the poor ending. And speaking of the ending, one of the reasons why I didn't mind it as much as some people is because this is something I've always wanted to know, and I'm not sure if we've ever gotten an answer to this. Was it ever explicitly stated, like, under what set of circumstances Greg wrote the ending to Bionicle? As in, did he know it was going to be continued with the serials, or was that like a last-minute deal after it had already been finalized? Because
that seemed like a last-minute thing.
But going back to that show I was talking about earlier, what happened with that, the whole reason that ended on a cliffhanger is because a deal was established to actually move it to another network and for it to continue. But that fell through. But the ending was already written for the sole purpose of it continuing, and certain things were thrown in to provide future story potential. Several things that were kind of seemed random and out of left field were used to set up future plot points. And then making that point about the ending, I don't really, and that's one of the reasons it never bothered me as much as it did some people. I don't know, like, maybe how it ended was going to be used to set up story serial revelations that simply never came. And speaking of story serial revelations, getting to my actual point, with Velika, I like Velika. I think his being the great being that is, I think his personality traits kind of fit. I think I'm against calling it a plot twist for plot twist's sake, because we have this information in a vacuum. We know the info, we have no context. Because this was not meant to be a revelation of sorts like all this has been hinted about for years. This was meant to be almost like the premise of the entire story as it's being told. As you're reading the story, certain things happen, and then this comes at the climax. But we're only reading the climax, we have no story around it. And we likely never will. So, as sad as that is to say. Or at least not in the foreseeable future, to use a phrase. And one of the reasons the Red Star does in fact bother me, where Velika does not, is because it's just going hand in hand to that show that I used to watch, where, now death has been cheapened by a story revelation. There's hints being set up for stories that never came. Bionicle's ending, and I've long since said this, the actual content of the ending does not bother me as much as it did some. It was the execution and the handling by LEGO that really ruined it for me, and this is exactly the same case here. It's not the information that bothers me, it's the fact that we're getting this information and it's making it seem worse than it probably actually is, because we're not getting the story to accompany it. Which really does beg the question, I kind of wonder if Greg has these chapters like already written, and instead of taking the time to correspond with Erebus and like give him all this info, in the time it took for him to do that, he could have like written a chapter and just sent it via PM. Yeah, those
Yeah.
are those are my thoughts. I like Valika. I don't really like the Red Star, and I think both can't be judged until we actually get more context. Bleh.
Mhm. I guess I'm of the opinion that like even with from this point on on the story any more hints are just sort of meaningless because they're coming so late and so close to the revelation, as opposed to being there from you know long enough to make the plot twist meaningful. But, yeah, I guess I do want to point out something that I've been arguing with Bones about this on Busy Power forums, and to be honest, I haven't replied to him in a while because I've been extremely busy with school, and I haven't even. This is why this recording is coming so late because our schedules have all been kind of messed up lately. Basically, not Greg, Bones pointed out something. He was talking about like in story comparison, in story perspective to something as opposed to out of story. And although I do find that interesting, I think that like at some point you have to distance yourself from that. And I get it's on the post I have later. But if you compare, I guess his reaction was like, oh, because the Matoran in the Bionicle universe would be overjoyed to see people they fought dead alive. That makes that it doesn't cheapen the death of the character. But I don't know, I just resurrections, if they're handled poorly, cheapen the death of pretty much anybody. I mean, all right, let's take for example, like I gave an example in my post, Lois Lane's death in Superman in the movie. I'm not sure if everybody has seen this, but it's it's a kind of old movie. So by now, if you haven't seen it already, I'm just going to spoil it for you because you should have seen it a while ago. Lois Lane is in this earthquake that's caused by, I guess it's caused by the missiles erupting. I don't know how it works. It's an old movie. So Lois Lane their car is caught in this earthquake, and Superman's trying to stop the missiles. And he stops the missiles, and he's just going down, and Lois Lane is in their car, and she gets devoured by a car, and basically she just dies in this earthquake. And Superman goes there, and he rips open the door, and he pulls her out, and he gives the Darth Vader no. It's like no. And then he looks around for a second, he drops her, and then he flies off into the sky, and then he does something that's just he goes around the world backwards. And he goes around the world backwards so fast, it makes it rotate backwards. And he goes back in time before she dies. And he pulls her car out of the earthquake. And then, so basically, this is one of the poorest revivals I've ever seen. Because Lois Lane's death is completely cheapened. Because Superman flew around the world backwards at super speed. So it's poorly handled. And there's no emotion in that scene at all. It's just a bad thing. Of course, if you want to go from a character perspective, Superman's like, well, maybe it's a good thing that Lois died, because else we wouldn't have this drama for the viewers to see and all that stuff. I'm really happy that Lois died now. I mean, obviously, Superman's not going to be like that, so that's probably why he flew around the Earth. That doesn't take it away from being a bad resurrection and a bad scene overall. It's just, I mean, if anyone who's seen that scene, especially nowadays, that's a really corny scene. I mean, that's just really corny. As compared to, okay, now this one, I'm going to give you some leniency because, the DVD just came out. So if you are looking for spoilers, you should probably just mute for quick seconds here. But the Avengers, it's one of the big summer blockbusters just came out. In it, and, again, spoilers, Agent Phil Coulson dies midway. And that death is much more meaningful, not just because the character had been built up over so many movies. It really felt like it really was impactful, and that's the first death in a movie in a long while that I've been sort of actually impacted by, I guess.
Wait,
I really like that character.
Whoa. Kahi has feelings. He felt sad for something
I was just I generally, when people die in movies, there's this sort of either I'm like, oh, they're in a movie, or oh, this character, maybe I didn't like him too much, or maybe I didn't enjoy him too much, or maybe I saw the death coming, or I don't really actually feel bad that a character dies in a movie. This time I actually felt really bad for because I really had gotten to like this character throughout the course of the movie. So, and because of that, the death is handled extremely well, and it's just the characters are they're also, but like the way it's handled is just so different. They're both comic book movies, right? They both have superpowered individuals, but neither it's a very strong difference between the two. And and I guess Joss Whedon, he's killed off multiple people in the past. Firefly, Serenity, Bishop, and Wash. Those poor people. Leaves on the wind, etc., etc. I was going to give a spoiler warning for that, but let's face it. If you're a Firefly fan, you've seen those. If you're not a Firefly fan, then 1, shame on you. 2, just
Become one.
don't even bother saying. Just to you should watch Firefly.
I will.
Kahi.
Fine. I will.
But,
I will.
But I just in the end, it doesn't really matter, or not. It doesn't really matter. What the characters think. Yeah, at the end of the day, what the characters think. No, even in the worst fanfic ever, even the worst, me and Eljay, we review bad comics on a daily basis. If the main character of a comic is going to die, and he died in his very way, and then maybe he was revived, maybe he wasn't, the characters would obviously feel sad. And any piece of fiction, no matter good or bad, if the main character dies, the character will always feel sad. Like in any piece of fiction. That doesn't detract it from being good or bad. Like that doesn't make oh, this is bad planning, and that doesn't suddenly make it good. So I just want to put that out there and be like, yeah, I'm all that. Anyhow,
I just have to think as far as comics and fan fiction go. What does that mean from the death of one of my comic characters, Lays?
Oh, Lays. With your hard to read text.
Be quiet, Meso.
Oh yeah, that person who we met like 2 comics before.
Okay. Anyway, so I guess that
we're all
pretty much wraps it up.
So that's one of those deaths like Bruce Wayne's parents.
Yeah, it's like it's an origin.
It's sad,
It's
but you never
Uncle-
really knew him well enough.
Yep. Oh,
Yeah.
Lays, how
So-
we never knew ye.
Honey eyes are... Anyway, that about wraps us up, doesn't it?
Pretty much, we've all said our piece.
Yep.
Multiple times.
Yep. So, yeah, multiple times. I guess if you haven't paying attention to this, if you listened this entire way through, and if you want to share your own opinions, put something in the comments below. Or like, share,
Rate.
favorite. If you rate, I will brutally murder you. Brutally.
As a favor, for anyone who's listening to this, as a favor, what I want you to do for me, I want you to, at the end of your comment, put down how many stars out of 5 you would rate this video if the star rating system was still active on YouTube.
Good.
Bring back star ratings.
I don't-
Oh, I heard. Anyway,
It's better than like
Bring back actual YouTube. But anyhow.
Oh, YouTube. How far...
Yep,
oh,
that's-
YouTube, how far you've fallen. That's another story for another day.
Okay. Well, that's about it. Those are all our opinions about the new story revelations, and of course they differ, and we've debated and discussed them. And to be honest, it's up to you guys. It's up to you personally as a reader to what you think was great for the story and what you think wasn't. Hopefully, we've made you think about this a bit more. Made you see a bit more reason as to why it could go in different ways. Or maybe might inspire you to do something right Bionicle better than it actually is being written right now, which I've considered doing at some points.
yeah. and hopefully you understand that, I'm right and Kahi isn't. But yeah, so thank you for listening to this. Kahi, our names?
Yes, I'm Kahi,
I'm Eljay.
Oh, I'm Mesonak.
and this has been TTV Debate Corner.
Episode 1, really, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh man, we've lost all the other debate corners. Oh man, can you believe this?
Yes, actually.
I can just imagine. I can just imagine how it is to to hear this episode for the first time. And you have no idea the stuff we've talked about. We must have done at least 4 different debate corner episodes by this point, and all of them went for really long, and like, I just can't, like, to be on the other side of that and never know all the stuff we recorded for you guys, and that just never got, man.
It would suck.
Anyhow, yes.
I feel sorry for you guys. Anyway, see you next time.
Cue the music.
Bye. Thank you for listening.
And
You see.
and that's why I feel like oh, good grief! Shut up! Go away. There's so much editing needs to be done this episode.
I'm like gonna get lazy and not even do it.
Like the actual
Okay,
TTV episode.
I'm gonna argue with Keeney today.